The air in Aurelia was thick with the scent of money and rosemary. It was the kind of place where waiters didn't walk, they glided, and the water glasses were filled with a liquid that probably had its own pedigree. This was it, our 10th anniversary. A decade with Jessica, the woman I had built my entire world around. I'd saved for 6 months for this night, working overtime shifts at the architectural firm, taking on freelance projects that bled into my weekends. All for this, for one perfect, unforgettable night to prove that the distance I'd felt growing between us was just a phantom of my overworked imagination. I smoothed down my tie for the 10th time, the knot feeling like a noose of anxiety. Jessica was already there, as we'd planned. She'd wanted to get ready with a friend beforehand, something about a new dress she wanted to surprise me with. I clutched the small velvet box in my pocket. It wasn't a diamond, not on my salary, but it was a sapphire necklace, the deep blue matching the color of her eyes, the color I'd fallen in love with across a crowded college library. I saw her before she saw me. She was at the best table in the house, the one by the panoramic window overlooking the city lights. And she did look stunning. Her dress was a shimmering cascade of silver that I'd never seen before. But she wasn't alone. A man sat opposite her, his suit so sharply tailored it looked like it was forged, not sewn. He had a smug, easy confidence that I immediately loathed. He leaned in close, whispering something that made her laugh, a full-throated, genuine laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. My heart hammered against my ribs. A colleague? A client? My mind scrambled for a logical explanation, a lifeline to cling to. I took a deep breath and started my glide across the plush carpet. A forced smile plastered on my face. "Sorry I'm late, honey," I began, my voice sounding hollow in the opulent space. Traffic was a nightmare. Jessica's laughter died in her throat. Her eyes, the same ones I'd bought the necklace for, met mine. But they were cold, flat, and unfamiliar. The man, who I now recognized as Leo, a wealthy developer our firm occasionally worked with, didn't even bother to stand. He just smirked, swirling a glass of deep red wine. "Mark," Jessica said, her voice devoid of any warmth. It was the voice she used for telemarketers. "What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "What am I? It's our anniversary, Jess. Aurelia, table for 2, remember?" She exchanged a look with Leo, a silent conversation that I was not privy to. It was a look of shared annoyance, of an inconvenience that had just walked in. Then she looked back at me, her expression hardening into something cruel. "Oh, that." She gestured vaguely at the empty chair beside her, not as an invitation, but as an indictment. Plans changed. Leo finally spoke, his voice as slick as his hair. "Look, man, I think you've got the wrong idea here." "My only idea," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "is that I have a reservation for my 10th wedding anniversary and my wife is sitting at my table with you." I waited for her to defend me, to explain, to tell this man to leave. Instead, she picked up her menu, the thick, embossed cardstock a shield between us. A waiter, sensing the tension, approached with a bottle of water. "Sir, can I get you seated?" Before I could answer, Jessica's voice cut through the air, sharp and final. "We didn't order for you." The words hung there, suspended in the clinking of cutlery and murmured conversations around us. We. The word was a dagger. It wasn't I, it was we. She and him. A unit. And I was the intruder. The waiter froze, looking between us. Leo let out a low chuckle, taking a large gulp of his wine. The humiliation was a physical heat that spread up my neck and across my face. I could feel the eyes of other diners on us, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. They had already ordered. In front of them were plates of oysters on a bed of ice and a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than my first car. They hadn't waited. They hadn't even considered me. I was an afterthought to my own life. For a moment I wanted to shatter, to scream, to flip the table, to cause a scene that would match the cataclysm in my chest. But then a strange, icy calm washed over me. It was the kind of calm that comes after the storm has already destroyed everything you own. There's nothing left to save, so you just stand there and watch the rain. I looked at Jessica, truly looked at her, and I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a stranger wearing her face, a cold, calculating person who could inflict this kind of pain without flinching. "You're right," I said, my voice steady now. "You didn't." I turned to the maitre d'. "My apologies. There's been a misunderstanding. I won't be dining tonight." I walked away. I didn't run. I walked with a dignity I didn't feel, past the tables of whispering strangers, out of the heavy oak doors and into the cold night air. The velvet box in my pocket felt like a lead weight. I walked for blocks, aimlessly, the city lights blurring through the tears I refused to let fall. The betrayal was so profound, so complete. It wasn't just the affair, it was the public execution, the deliberate, theatrical cruelty of it. She wanted me to see, she wanted me to be hurt, and she had succeeded. That night I didn't go home. I stayed at a cheap motel and pieced together the last year of my life. The late nights she claimed were with girlfriends, the sudden obsession with her phone, the financial secrecy. It was all there, a trail of breadcrumbs I had been too blind, too trusting to follow. The next morning I hired a lawyer, the best one I could afford. And that's when I discovered the twist. It wasn't just about Leo. My lawyer, a shark named Ms. Albright, started digging. Jessica had been systematically moving assets, small amounts from our joint savings, selling off stocks I thought we were holding for retirement. And she had opened a new credit card in my name, rerouting the statements to a P.O. box. She was building a nest egg to start her new life, and she was using me to fund her escape. My lawyer found a charge from 2 weeks prior, a prepaid, non-refundable deposit, for a dinner reservation at Aurelia, for over $1,000. She had used my own money, from a card I didn't even know existed, to pay the deposit for her romantic dinner with her lover, the dinner she planned to humiliate me at. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. Ms. Albright advised a quiet, swift divorce. Cut my losses, expose the fraud, and move on. But the image of her saying, "We didn't order for you," was burned into my mind. A quiet divorce felt like letting her win. So I formulated a new plan, a final act. I had Ms. Albright contact Aurelia's manager. We explained the situation, the fraudulent card, the impending legal battle. I proposed something unconventional. They were, understandably, hesitant, until Ms. Albright mentioned the potential for a public relations nightmare involving credit card fraud at their esteemed establishment. They quickly became very cooperative. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday, I walked back into Aurelia. This time, I didn't have a reservation. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and watched the main dining room. At 8 p.m., just as I'd anticipated, they walked in. Jessica and Leo, laughing and touching, completely at ease. They were seated at the same table by the window. They were regulars now, apparently. The perfect power couple. I watched them order the most expensive items on the menu: the A5 Wagyu steaks, the lobster, another bottle of vintage champagne. They were celebrating. I knew, because I had received the divorce papers that morning. She was probably celebrating her freedom, her victory. I nursed my whiskey for 2 hours, watching the whole sordid play. As they finished their dessert, Leo, looking magnanimous, made a grand gesture for the check. The waiter, a young man I had spoken to earlier, nodded and disappeared. When he returned, he walked straight past Leo and placed the heavy leather billfold directly in front of Jessica. Leo chuckled. "Whoops, I think that's for me, son." Jessica looked confused. "Leo, it's fine, you got it last time." She opened it, expecting to hand it over to him. Her smile froze. Her face went from flushed with wine to a ghostly white. The color drained completely. Her eyes widened in horror. I could see the number even from the bar. It was just shy of $1,000, a sum I knew for a fact she didn't have readily available now that I had frozen our joint accounts. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The waiter cleared his throat, reciting the lines we had rehearsed. "Ma'am, the deposit for this reservation was flagged for fraud and has been declined. As per our restaurant policy, the remaining balance and the deposit must be paid by the primary reservation holder. The name on the reservation is Jessica Meller." Leo's smug expression vanished. "What fraud? Just put it on my card." "I'm afraid we can't do that, sir," the waiter said politely. "The entire reservation is now linked to Ms. Meller. The bill is her responsibility." This was my cue. I slid off the bar stool and walked over to their table, placing my empty whiskey glass down with a soft click. "Having some trouble?" I asked, my voice calm and even. Jessica looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pure hatred and panic. "You!" she hissed. "You did this!" "I just corrected a mistake," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "You see, you booked this little celebration using a fraudulent card in my name." I just had that cleared up. "So now, the bill for the dinner you enjoyed with your boyfriend is all yours. Consider it an alimony prepayment." Leo stood up, puffing out his chest. "Now listen here." "No, you listen." I cut him off, my voice dropping. "You're sleeping with my wife. The least you could do is pay for her dinner." I turned back to Jessica. Her face was a mask of disbelief and fury. All the poise and elegance she had projected was gone, replaced by a raw, ugly panic. She was trapped. Trapped by her own greed and her own cruelty. "I hope you enjoyed the steak," I said softly, the final twist of the knife. "You didn't order for me, but it seems I arranged the payment for you after all." I turned and walked out of Aurelia for the second and final time. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of her face, pale and horrified, was burned into my memory. It wasn't a triumphant victory. The pain of her betrayal was still a raw, open wound. But as I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt the weight in my pocket was gone. I felt lighter. The cost of that dinner was immense, but the price of my freedom, that was priceless.